Hey everybody, it's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And we are so excited to be here with you tonight.
Yep.
There is so much that has been going on. Kind of no matter where you are, everyone is kind of in that transition season. And it's been kind of fun, like hopping around and doing some fishing.
Yeah, you were sending me pictures from northern Wisconsin, and the lakes are still frozen up there. But we've been in the boat. We've been hitting up some walleyes before we get hard on the panfish here.
There are a few different river systems that have been open. We have been on, our home waters are like the Wolf River. So I think we talk about that, kind of pretty often because how do you not love that Wolf River? But we've also been up a little bit north of that as well. And, the thing is there's so many different river hotspots in our area of the Midwest. So I think the funny thing is, it's the one time of our life that we kind of live in the vacation destination.
Yeah, the Winnebago system and the Green Bay system, they don't close for walleye. So we're lucky enough to be able to go fish those as soon as the water opens up. And we've been splitting our time between our local Wolf River and the Green Bay system, and it's try a day for some trophies and then try a day for some snacks.
Well, and with that, the crazy thing that I think a lot of people can really relate to, even across the different states and everything, is wind.
Yeah.
I've been hearing everybody talk about the wind lately, and that has been super true for us as well. So no matter which day we were out and which body of water we were on, we found that boat control was key.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll even go as far as saying line control is key, because in a lot of these cases we were still doing different jigging tactics and all of that, and you have to really kind of know where your jig and your bait is to be in that target zone to get those bites. So in both cases that did happen. Up farther north, I think the water's a little bit chillier, and I think the walleyes we're talking about, they're focused on that spawn. So I think there's a lot of people that went out and there was a lot of suckers caught. A lot of nets went out, and they were some big fish and some great fights, but a lot of those walleyes were hard to find, to be honest. And then down by us, I think that the bite would have been on better had it not been the wind conditions. And you hate to just talk about that so much, but even on our way in, gosh, we got pelted, and with our tiller, we got wet. The splash was amazing. The waves on the river, we were trying to float with the current, and the wind was against us, and it was like
3-4 footers on the river. It was pretty nuts.
But we did find actually some great males. A few of them we did actually keep and eat. So we don't often do that, but maybe once in a while it happens. So that was a really great time. But I'm always interested in where you guys are at and what you're fishing for and what those conditions look like there. Because again, across the different parts of the country, we are all in different stages right now. So I would love to hear about where you are and how that's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Throw it in the chat.
Cool. So with that, let's bring in our guest tonight. So Gus, thanks for being here tonight.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be on the show.
Yeah. We always love being out with you and all of your boats. And we have a ton that we're excited to talk about. Well, it's true. But for people who maybe don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Avid, passionate crappie fisherman, bass fisherman. I started tournament fishing when I was 7 years old. My dad got me in a kids derby locally here in Western Pennsylvania. Lived real close to the PA-Ohio border, surrounded by some of the most amazing lakes. Grew up bass fishing. Spent most of my time in the summer, late spring through summer, end of fall, bass fishing, and then my relaxation was crappie fishing. So at the end of tournament season, when the championships were done, I bought my minnows, grabbed my jig, and started crappie fishing. Now I always had that in the back of my mind. I'd like to try some crappie tournaments. And then last year we jumped into our first, my partner Dan Druschel and I jumped into some crappie tournaments and did shockingly well. So in addition to the tournament fishing, we also run Western PA Hardwater Ice Fishing Series, which We literally just wrapped up. I mean, we were ice fishing, it feels like a week ago. But no, like about a month ago, we were on ice. So it's been a really crazy year out here. In Western PA can be feast or famine when it comes to ice. Yeah, so crazy ice fisherman guy here. Still love bass fishing, don't do it as much. Now I'm kind of phasing into crappie a little bit. I might bounce back and forth a little bit. Just got that competitive bug in me and running with it. So that's me in a nutshell.
And that is awesome that you bring up that ice season because, I feel like that. Hey, come on. No, I'm kidding. But I do feel like that's kind of where we left off as you were going right into the season. So, can you give us a little recap? Like, how'd things go? How was fishing? What did that look like for you?
Well, in Western PA, you never know. A lot of people told us when we first started the series 7 years ago that we were crazy, would never succeed. We are a panfish only series. Typically out here, it's the crappies that take the cake. We usually shoot for 4 tournaments. We plan on 4 tournaments out here, but we usually don't expect that many. We expect 2, maybe 3, sometimes 1. And that's okay with us. We understand that's just how the weather works out here. Sometimes we have years where we just don't get that much ice. Last year, not this past season, the season before, we chased ice everywhere, moved events, shuffled dates. It was crazy and really stressed us out. This year, every single date that we predicted, we hit. So we hit 4 out of 4. Had a crazy amount of ice out. I think we measured 16 to 20 inches ice on a few lakes, which is not real normal out here. Kind of just haven't had that in a few years. We averaged, again, close to 100 teams per event, professional teams from all over the eastern United States, New York. I think we had a couple teams from Michigan, several from Ohio, Vermont, and Maryland. Believe it or not, we had, I think, 7 teams from Maryland. I didn't even know they ice fish down there. That's news to me. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But no, it was a great season. Saw some great fish. Crappie was the dominant fish again this year. No huge giants. Last year we had a 2.5 pounder weight in. This year I think the biggest fish was 2.25 crappie, which is still good, but just like you had mentioned in your opening, the wind was terrible this season. Each event we had, it was just we had one.
I hate that you could identify with that.
Yeah. One of our events was on my phone, a warning went off on my phone for gale force winds. There was 50-mile-an-hour winds during the middle of the tournament.
Yeah.
So,
I don't mean to laugh because that genuinely is terrible. Like, as far as an ice fisherman, like, you gotta, or open water, any time you're out in the elements, you have to be prepared because they can change fast and it can be intense. But you're right. Like, as a fisherman, it does feel like it's been an excessively brutal year.
It's been so windy that we bought 2 more shacks in addition to the 6 shacks that we already have. Just so that because we have some 1-person shacks, but they weren't very good in the wind.
Sure.
So we had to buy 2 more right at the end of the season just to get out because it was just so windy every day.
Yep.
It's just
it's crazy. The majority of our top teams, we have some really talented anglers, all over PA, all over the place. They're just amazing. They're all wearing striker suits and they don't use shanties. They do not use shanties. They are sitting outside in that. A lot of them use palm rods or small rods to deal with the wind, and they're just holding them close to themselves to protect that so they can see their bite. But striker suits all the way.
Anglers, that you almost got it because you got to be so mobile. But for us, it's more about like you got to keep the ice off the line and keep the holes open and stuff long enough.
Sure.
But you were talking about suits, and that's a perfect segue into Travis here has a question actually. Asking, what is your favorite suit for ice fishing?
Well, this year I tried the Apex. I bumped up to the Apex this year. I had to give it a try, and I'm blown away by the bibs. The bibs alone, I'm still shocked. When I put those on my house for the first time, it felt like I had little Mr. Heater hand warmers all over my leg. It was almost creepy. I didn't know what was going. They're warm and they're thin and lightweight. I can move easier. I went from a Climate to the Apex, and the bulkiness is gone. I still like the Climate, but I don't need it anymore. The Apex is perfect. The knee pads in it, also amazing. It's almost like a gel foam. I don't know what's in there. what they put in it, but it's magic to me. Maybe they have little magic hand warmers. I don't know.
Never even needs recharging, and it's washable. How convenient.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I'm imagining one of the things that you'll do with your climate is because you can remove that inner layer. And that shell is really, really great because one of the things about that Apex suit is it does have that Primaloft insulation, that like superior warmth. So, it does make for really great transition suit when you use that shell of that climate because you're talking about like, you don't always get great ice over on the East Coast. I mean, sometimes in the Midwest, we don't get great ice, it depends on that weather. But when you have that transition gear and, it's the shell that has that float in it. So that's always really nice that you can take away some of that heat and still have that in there.
Yep. Now, last week, I took a vacation week. We fished the first, Dan and I's first national size event with Crappie USA. But we also were on an online tournament that we're fishing. We're actually in 2 online tournaments. One both on Pymatuning Lake. We fished there on last Monday and Tuesday in the snow wearing our ice suits. So I was wearing my Apex suits on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, we left for St. Mary's, Ohio. By Thursday, we were wearing shorts. So, I mean, it's crazy. We traveled with snow suits, snow boots, shorts, and t-shirts, and sunblock.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a time of the year that you need like really great layering systems.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh yeah. I mean everything. I mean, I wear striker short. I wear their shorts. You can't beat them.
So how did the tournament go for you?
It was bittersweet. I guess we went into it with high expectations after last season. Maybe a little overconfident. St. Mary's, Ohio was Grand Lake in St. Mary's, Ohio. That's a bad lake. Big fish down there. A big fish on that lake is about 10 to 11 inches. We were hunting for 9-inch fish. Ohio state limit, your size limit is 9 inches, so we had to have 9-inch fish. Our practice, we had 2 practice days. We did terrible in practice. We stumbled across one brush pile in a corner of a canal. Believe it or not, the canals on this it's a big lake. It's a man-made lake that was created for the Erie Canal system. So the whole thing is only 3 to 5 feet deep. And there's canals all around it where people built their homes, and those are the deepest locations. We found one spot. It had fish in it. We were able to fish it for a while. Another team came in and he fished it too. And the next day they beat us there, and we struggled. We ended up finishing right in the middle of the pack. So, I mean, we fished the professional the side of it. You could fish pro or amateur. We chose to go professional and see what we could do. We definitely know we can keep up with these guys. Just need a little more time on a body of water. 2 days of not knowing the lake, not knowing where to go was a little bit of a struggle trying to find things, a little bit of a rush. But yeah, we left there and went back. On Sunday, we had another tournament on Pymatuning Lake in Western PA. So we drove 4 hours back home to fish another tournament and finished in 9th place in that event with no practice. Monday and Tuesday when we went there for practice, it snowed and fish weren't doing anything. So it was an experience. We definitely were rusty after this winter. My boats were really not ready. Had some bugs on both boats. Pymatunings are restricted. We have to have 20 horsepower, so that's why I have this snow camo boat here with a restricted motor, and then a big boat behind me for the unlimited lakes. So we had to switch everything from boat to boat once we got home at 9 o'clock, and then got up again at 4 o'clock and left again. But
you know what I hate to say though? Again, like I hate to be able to relate, but it's like that is, I think people do know what you're talking about. People are going to be in that situation. Some people have not even gotten their boats out yet at all, and that is just fine because it is not a rush or whatever. I mean, the nice weather hasn't even gotten here for us at least. But I mean, I think that's the thing about it. The first time that you go out, you got to kind of track those fish down. That transition from winter to summer, or just, I mean, some people don't even ice fish, I guess.
Oh yeah.
With the boat, the transition into that, I mean, there are so many kinks to work out. And I think
Mhm.
everyone just expects to like jump right back into where they left off like last summer or fall. And that is not the case.
That's right. Yeah, on our event on Sunday, we went into it blind. We looked for fish on brush piles. We started out looking for fish on brush piles. We didn't do any good on the brush piles at the beginning. We went super shallow, thinking the water was starting to get into 50. At the beginning of the week, it was in the high 40s. By the day that we got there, it was in the mid 50s. We thought maybe they transitioned up into wood and weeds and flats. We couldn't find them on the wood, couldn't find them on the flats. Ended up transitioning back into brush piles and found a couple mega schools and just sat on them. The winning teams, you're not going to believe this one. This was Northeast Ohio Crappie Club. If you guys haven't heard of it, anybody out there listening, definitely need to look these guys up. It's a great series. Whether you're a beginner or have done this for years and years, it's a great event put on by great guys. Dan Elko runs it, super duper guy. But it's an 8 fish limit. First place in that event was 16.5 pounds. Every fish was over 2 pounds. This is Pymatuning Lake in Western Pennsylvania. It is a destination lake from anybody down south to up north. You need to get here. They recently, 3-4 years ago, I could be wrong on that, don't quote me, put a size restriction on the lake, on the crappies. I think they have to be 9 inches. Again, don't quote me on that too, I could be wrong. It's either 9 or 10 right in there. But they're just growing every year. They're massive, and there's tons of them. You're going to see some. The state record's probably going to grow pretty quick. Yeah, I mean, the average size fish is 11 to 12 inches long, and that's the little one there.
Have you ever seen like the Bass Pro Shop fish tank and it's just like crappies for days? I had to like remind my brain to like not be there and like be here.
Yep.
But like, you hear big crappies like that, that's what people think of. Ooh, I'm going to get my boat out. It's springtime. I'm going to go and I'm going to get all the crappies, the panfish, the bluegills, whatever it is for people. But you do kind of have to work for it. So again, that is why we are here to talk about that. So when you have been fishing so far, like what have your water temperatures been like?
Like I said, we started on last Monday. It was in the mid to high 40s, and it was snowing on Monday, Tuesday. As the week progressed, I think Saturday and Sunday we hit 80 degrees out here, which is unseasonal. The fish are so confused; they don't know what to do. We've got black crappies that look like they've been on beds for a week, and we got fish coming out of deep water that feel like they're a popsicle. So, but the temperature is warming. They are moving shallow fast. This is going to be the week to get on the fish. These are going to be the high number weeks. I'd say the next 7 to 10 days, get on the water and get out there and crush them. And in Western PA, all these northern states, it's going to get hot and heavy right now.
Well, that's really exciting because I don't think we are quite there yet in the Midwest anyways, but that is why we like to talk the trends all the way down. So, as far as targeting some of those fish, how do you go about fishing this time of the season and going into the rest of spring and summer?
Well, I typically like to use big baits. I'm a bass guy, and I don't go at it as a normal crappie fisherman. Usually people are going out crappie fishing. They want to catch as many as they can get. Tournament angler, I want 7 to 8 of the biggest fish I can catch. I don't care if I get if I get 7 or 8 bites and they're the right bites, I'm happy with that. So Dan and I typically use big baits. 3-inch hand-tied baits, swim baits, big stuff that I know I've caught crappie on bass fishing over the years. I know they hit that stuff. I've even caught them on big jerk baits, that I know they eat them. So we typically use big stuff. We got slapped in the face at St. Mary's when we got out there in cold water and small fish. Fortunately, I brought my fly tying kit and tied up a lot of smaller jigs while we were out there, which is not normal for me. I did transition to some really small corks because it was mostly, you just couldn't move your jig. I couldn't snipe fish. They were close to structure, which out there it was docks. So metal structure, metal boat lifts, that's where they were, right up against them. Whatever was the warmest they could get at was where they were. You can't really snipe that too well, so you're shooting docks, which they didn't want the jig swimming. They wanted it not moving, kept still. So we ended up switching to real small floats and real small jigs, which kind of put me out of our comfort zone, and that's just not us. But we have to learn to adapt.
So it's crazy to me that as somebody who does not fish using flies very often, that you still bring a kit with you.
Well, yeah, I did for this event. I don't usually travel with them because usually I'm pretty close to home, within an hour or two. I have a lot tied up, but I took it this time just in case I had the inkling I needed to tie something small, because I don't keep anything small. And I wanted to catch something. I wanted to catch our fish on big lures. Again, didn't care if I only caught 7 fish. But all I
So you're
had
tying
was
really big flies then?
bigger than anybody else sells. I should be saying that, but that's my secret.
Okay, I was going to ask you more about that, but you don't have to elaborate if that's your secret. Was there a hot color though?
That lake was very popular. A lot of houses all over the place on all these canals, thousands of houses around it. Almost every other house, they had a jig pole sitting outside with a jig tied onto it, and everybody was using black and green. I tend to use a lot of like chartreuse colors, chartreuse and green, chartreuse and purple. For me, what we ended up catching all our fish on was like a chartreuse and purple. But it seemed like they like that darker. They must be feeding on something there that's similar in that color. I don't know what, but it was also muddy water, and we like those chartreuse colors when it's muddy.
Well, in some instances too, when like around here on the river, if we're not getting very good bites with our chartreuse, because that's electric chicken. If anybody's out there, that knows anything about crappie fishing, they know that color. And those two colors in particular are very popular with crappies, the pink and the chartreuse. But when we're fishing some of our muddy water here, and we're not getting bites on those colors, we will switch to like a blue or a black or a purple, just because I think what happens is they tend to be hitting shadows then, and they're not seeing it so much as they're getting it in the peripherals. And that lighter color in that muddy water can sometimes get lost if it's like, let's say it's a overcast day, but it's bright.
Right.
So using the shadow colors, I think sometimes they key in on that more. And we're starting to learn a little bit about that with the walleyes too in these systems, is that they're hitting those darker baits a lot better than the brighter baits.
We had our last event last October for the Northeast Ohio Crappie Series. Was held on Sandusky Bay in Erie, Lake Erie in Ohio. It's a hush spot. People don't know that that's a massive crappie location with 2 pound plus crappie, and even 3 pound crappie up there. We ended up finishing our season up there. I was mostly the entire season throwing like like you said, an electric chicken type color. That event we started out with throwing electric chicken, and it wasn't really producing real well. Start going through your box until you find something that works. I ended up with a color that I don't even know how to describe it. I don't even know what it's called. I call it like an American flag color. It was red, white, and blue with a clear body. It was a plastic, which I don't typically throw, little plastics under a float, but you got to change it up too. So don't be afraid to try a different color.
Well, and that is why I love talking to people, because it's funny, like you're like, oh, I never do that. And I'm like, that's exactly what Josh does 90% of all of his fishing, but like what one person does all the time might be totally novel to somebody else and all of that. And so, we're here, we talk about all these things, like it's, you hate to say there's no stupid questions, but really because so much of this, everyone does things so different.
Yep. And you have to adapt. You got to pay attention to the bait. If you see something flopping in the water and you're not catching fish, don't be afraid to look for a minnow floating or along the shore that's dead or dying. Try to match. I know Josh and I talked about that before. You got to match the hatch. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing about fishing crappies that I love, is that my first passion is fishing, and my second passion is collecting fishing gear. And panfish, you really get a chance to collect fishing gear because, like you said, you fish a lot of big baits, and we have a tendency to throw smaller baits, and but But I do have like the bigger stuff in the box. So just because I have a co-angler all the time, like we
Sure.
start on opposite ends of the spectrum and then
Yep.
work our way towards the middle. And then if one of us gets an advantage, then you can adjust your fishing from there and the whole boat can be successful.
And that's
But
exactly what Dan and I do in our tournaments. One of us might be sniping. Dan might be throwing a float. I'll be sniping. Vice versa. He'll be throwing a big bait. Casting. I might be running a float. We always, until we figure out what's going on, we never use the same thing until the bite starts happening.
mhm.
You just got to change. You just have to.
Yeah. One tip this time of year that I like to throw out to people, especially if you're float fishing, because there's two schools of thought to this, and I think they're both right in their own regards. I tend to lean one way, and some people tend to lean the other way. So in regards to floats, you can either use like a cigar float, like a peg float, and something that's really light, and they're cheap. You can buy a million for $1. You just don't get the casting distance, I feel like. And so a lot of times you want to use a little bit longer rod.
Yep.
Myself, I still use like a 7-foot float rod, and I use like a medium light, which is pretty heavy for crappies, but it's really nice for the float rod because it gives you a lot more accurate cast. But one thing I use one of those bubble bobbers for trout fishing.
Mm.
And it's kind of like for the trout fishing, it's kind of like a cheat aid for the guys that are using spinning reels to fly fish for trout. But the whole premise is that bobber is clear, and so it looks like a bubble, so fish can't see it. They just they
And
notice
even
the
I
bait
can't see
more.
it.
Yep.
So I'll take that clear bobber, and I'll take a little bit of epoxy and mix some color into it. So I have ones with orange tops and green tops depending on the light.
Right.
And I'll glue around the stem on the top, and then I'll use the clear epoxy and glue around the stem so no water gets in there. But that gives me that extra casting distance so I can stay away from the crappies. And even though it does create a little bit of a splash, there's nothing there for them to look at. So like it makes some motion on the water. I feel that's like an attractant. So they
Right.
look, they don't see anything except for my jig coming down.
Sure.
So that's one thing, don't be afraid to test all different kinds of bobbers. I've started a bobber collection. I have all kinds of
For real,
floats,
though.
and don't be afraid to just experiment with some of that stuff, because you never know what might work a little bit better on your body of water.
We found something out there at that Grand Lake St. Mary's. Again, you're fishing for really small fish. So they used a lot of really small bobbers. We walked into a bait shop thinking, all right, after practice, we're willing to try just about anything. So we wanted to see what they had. And we knew everybody was throwing these little bitty floats. They're now 3D printing these floats. Never seen that before. That was something new I've never seen. Maybe you guys seen it. I haven't. That was the first time. And they were cheap. They were small. I probably won't ever use them again. But we did use them, and we did catch fish out there. It was pretty crazy. I tend to use a lot of fill floats that are 2.5 inch long and oval. I use the slip bobber mostly because I can be really accurate with my cast when I put all of it real close to the lure. So I usually have a lot of people say, you don't want to use that's too big a bobber. I add a couple small BB size sinkers just above my jig to make that float completely neutral. So if I get an up bite, it'll be that bobber will come up and just lay flat, or it'll just twitch a little bit and go under. So you've got to tune those too. You can't just expect to go to a store and it'll work immediately.
Well, that is a really great point that you're making, because I think the average person, first of all, thinks bobber. And I think, transition to the word float, because, you think bobber, you think kid and a pond and tiny little bluegills and all that. But there's so much more versatility to a bobber, to a float, than just what that sounds like. But I think also, using that to target what you're going for, there are so many options. So to be able to hone in, I don't know, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean I've done so much research on float fishing just because it's one of my favorites. I feel like it's a major tactic, just like flipping or crankbaits or anything for bass. Floats for panfish is more than just watching throwing a bobber in the weeds and watching it. Like you can,
Sure.
it's such a versatile tool. There's another area of fishing that people should pay attention to, and that's carp fishing in Europe. And if you want to talk about dialing in floats, dudes over there, anglers over there have tackle boxes that are just floats. They have them labeled with the number of BBs that you can put on the line to set the float. They have all different lengths. If you want to go down a rabbit hole and get really good at tuning floats, go on YouTube and watch like carp fishing floats, and it will blow your mind.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, it's just like anything. I mean, as I talked to you last year, I don't know if I told you, I started my own electronics business. I now sell, install, repair boats, install and sell Garmin electronics, do a little bit of everything. I pay, you need to look outside your favorite species to learn things, to do it better. I do most of my electronic installs based off of Elite Series bass fishermen boats, because those guys are trying to make a living and their boats have to be set up perfect. So I look at their installs. So like your example, you're a crappie fisherman, but you got to look at carp fishing and to see what they're doing. You never know what's outside the industry that you could add to your favorite species, favorite hobby, whatever, to make yourself better.
Yeah, like tying up flies.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It is true though. I mean, that even crosses over into our walleye season. People use flies for that. And so, I think that is a fun thing about fishing is you are able to go out and like be so specific and try to target things. But I mean, overall, if you have like bait on a line and you never really know what's going to bite.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your electronics business. How is that going? It has
really
been
good.
A year.
Yeah, it was it's something I've always tinkered with my entire life. I've built and sold and repaired several boats over my lifespan. I'm not too old, but I've been tinkering it my entire life. And during doing tournaments, that's really hard on boats. So I've fixed just about everything. Just kind of taught myself on the fly. But I've always really enjoyed electronics. And of course, when LiveScope came out, I had to jump on that bandwagon. It changed our ice fishing series. It changed our ice fishing. It changed our crappie fishermen, everything. So I started tinkering with that. Opened up business, G&G Marine Electronics. We currently just have a Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook by searching G&G Marine Electronics. But doing a lot, selling a ton of Garmin equipment. I can sell anything, but 90% of what's going out the door is Garmin electronics. Everybody wants the LiveScope. The new LVS 34 LiveScope, unbelievable. You wouldn't think they could do something better, but they did. They're selling like crazy. Garmin actually broke all their records in history on the day they announced that LVS 34 transducer. The LiveScope Plus. They've never sold more. I'm not going to tell you the money amount, but it's astonishing. Broke all the records from aviation to automotive to fitness. They've never sold more in one day than a fish finder. It's crazy. So us fishermen, we're nuts. But business is going well.
One of the things that I do love hearing about that though is, that's one of the things that drives the industry. So whether it's a graph or this or that, I mean, we've all been talking, the last few years, especially with, COVID, and everyone's getting out into the outdoors and more people on the water. But, I think one of the things about that is, it creates awareness, it creates excitement, and it drives those different innovations. So that is actually pretty neat.
Oh yeah. And there's a learning curve too. That's something I tell my customers. You can go to a big box store and buy something, maybe on a Black Friday deal. They are a little confusing. The first time I ran LiveScope or even my Garmin systems, I think after 8 trips, it took me before I really got it dialed in and figured out. First couple trips, I was ready to throw the whole thing in the lake. It was frustrating. But now with my customers, I give them, when they buy off of me, I update their systems and install my tune. And then I give them a note card with that exact setup. So if they ever go out on their own body of water and they adjust it and play with it, and then they get into a moment where it's, oh shoot, they can revert back to those settings that I provided them, or they can call me. I love
That's
helping
really
these
awesome.
guys. Every week, somebody's calling me, asking me for how do I tune this, how do I do that. Every day, honestly, every day, probably not every week, every day, somebody's asking me, and I love it. So hopefully, I can make this my full-time job.
Yeah.
Maybe someday. It could happen.
Oh, it could happen. It could happen for sure. It's an amazing skill that you have. You're like, oh, I'm like self-taught and like all this. I'm like, oh my God, like if I if I had to install my own electronics, like I don't want to sound helpless by any means, because but like that is not a skill that I have, and that I would rather just have an expert take control of that. So
Sure,
I'm glad people like you exist.
sure,
I'm here to support you.
yeah. These systems are getting expensive, and people don't want to mess them up. I mean, it's no different than a laptop. I mean, honestly, they're more expensive than a laptop now. I've got friends and competitors and customers running 16-inch fish finders. I mean, I would have never saw that happening in a million years. I remember when a 7-inch Lowrance HDS came out. I remember people coming to I bought it like right away when they came out with that, and people coming to my boat saying, "That's huge." And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty big, but a 7-inch fish finder was massive 10 years ago. Now we're on to 16-inch fish finders, and I think I saw a video of another professional crappie angler running something that was in the 20 plus range. So
Yeah, the Humminbird Apex they're running almost 20 inches. The only reason we know that, we were hanging out in the Aquaview booth with Colt Ringer, the owner of Aquaview, and telling people down in Missouri, showing them the wonders of underwater viewing, and one of the most frustrating things was the only reason they stopped. We had all these cool videos going with fish and this and that. All they wanted to talk about was that 19 or 20-inch Apex that we had.
Look at the screen.
Absolutely, yeah, it's crazy. I would be. I mean, I'd be kind of afraid to have that in the front of my boat. I fish Lake Erie a lot, and that just would scare the daylights out of me. I ran a 9-inch 93 SV Garmin. I ran 2 of those on the front of my boat last year. This year I upped them to 10-inch. I'm super happy with that. I've got a 12-inch in the back of my boat that I switch between boats. I think if somebody's interested in getting into live scope, there's nothing wrong with the 93 SV. The 106, the 10-inch, the 106, 102 non-mapping, excellent system. I mean, you're talking big bucks once you start getting in 12 inches and above, but entry level, the 9-inch 93 SV is an excellent system. So there's nothing wrong with that, and you can see just fine with it.
Well, and one of the awesome things about going to somebody who knows what they're talking about is, you often run into people that are like, I want live scope. And then they like go somewhere and they're like, don't even know what those different options mean, much less how to navigate the menus and stuff when they get there. Yep. So, I mean, that is actually really cool that you offer kind of that full service, that you know all the stuff about the gear. I mean, I guess that sounds stupid to say, that's your expertise, but that's a lot to know.
And there's a lot of different systems and different price points for every customer. I get a lot of text messages asking if I have something, and then I usually tell people, is it okay to have you call me? And I explain to them, if you're looking for something budget friendly, you can actually get a system. If you're only using it for live scope, you don't need mapping. There's no reason to have mapping. So you can save a couple $100 by buying a system without mapping, or buy another system that does not have like a 2D transducer. So those are actually the non-mapping, non-2D transducer included are probably the hottest seller, because everybody's just adding on the live scope, and they're just going with live scope only on the front of their boats.
That is really interesting, but that is part of why it's so important to know those settings and all of that, and be able to read what it's showing you. Wow. That's crazy.
Well, and it's not too much different than hiring a guide, right? So you're hiring a guide for a few hours, and they're showing you techniques that you may not know, or they're showing you spots in your home areas, or maybe you're just wanting to get out and learn how to run a boat, or just those little things. That's what you pay guides for, and that's what Gus and people with similar expertise are providing for people, is that they're showing, they can walk you through an install. Probably you can walk through with them as they work on your boat, or you can just hand it to them and say, make it work, and I'll come and pick it up, and you give them the card and they're good to go. So, I mean, that it's really cool to have that out there, because I would probably be one of those people that I I would like to sit and chat with you and ask why you're doing it that way, and like run through it, maybe help run wires and stuff. But Emily might be somebody that just says, I'll be back after I get my coffee from Starbucks.
I've had customers that
just is what it is.
I've had customers that come from an electronic background that know how to do all this stuff. They just don't have the time to do it. I totally understand and respect that. I also have customers that just don't want to catch their boat on fire and they don't want to do it themselves. I've seen just about everything in the last 5 months, 4 months. It's shocking what I've seen and how things have been done. And honestly, it's rather frightening from what I've seen. Even some brand new boats, it blows my mind what I see coming off of the manufacturing line, and really rather disappointing, to be completely honest with you. But as you mentioned before, one of the things I'll be adding here this summer is a consulting to the G&G Marine lineup. So not only I can sell you, you don't have to buy off me, but I will be, I could meet you on the lake with your boat and help you set up your own boat. You have it already in there. You just want to know how to use it and have it tuned correctly. Because if you have everything well tuned and oiled correctly, it works so well.
And so if I don't live near you, can we meet in the middle?
Yeah. You need to come out here to Pima Tuning like next week if you can get out here. It's gonna be hard.
The East Coast is on our list. We have a growing list of trips to be making. We're starting out west and working our way east.
Well, you get out here. I'll give you a place to stay, and you'll have a blast. I'll put you in the boat. You can take one of these boats. You take your pick, and we'll just have a blast catching whatever you want. We'll go get it.
Well, I'm on my way. But I do have to ask, what is up next for you for this open water season? Like, what does this look like?
It's going to be a mix. I still have a little bit of, it's a lot of bass fishing blood running through me. I still I don't want to get out of that completely. I am going to be fishing the Northeast Ohio Crappie series. I'll be doing that again. I'm also going to be fishing a new event that was invitational only. The Midwest Crappie Alliance created a tournament that's going to be on Cumberland Lake in October. I think that's a $60,000 event. We qualified for the Crappie USA National Championship. I think that's $165,000 they're giving away for that event. So we're going to try to make it to that. That's on Kentucky Lake. We've got a few bass tournaments that I like to do that are pretty local. I did join into another bass club. One of my buddies started up a club. Actually, my partner with the WPA Hardwater Series created a bass club up in Erie. So I joined that, and I'll probably tinker around with that a little bit too. Hopefully, I don't know. It's going to be, we'll see where it goes. Last year, we won 100% crappie and kicked butt and took names the whole time. I think we just got lucky. I don't know. But we're going to keep trying and see what happens. Keep the business going, see where we can expand that. I'd love to get that going more full time. We'll see what happens with that. Supply chain issues are, of course, a problem right now. I sell lithium batteries for Amped also. And it's difficult getting things right now from anybody, anywhere. It's every manufacturer. It's not just one manufacturer. It's all manufacturers are struggling to get things. So it's hard for the people that are running a small business full time. Need to say a prayer for them and hope they succeed through all of this, because it's hard. And I'm seeing that. I'm realizing that and understanding that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is for sure. We thought that, we were past like Christmas and all the craziness. And then there was like that whole other ship that got stuck in some mud somewhere.
They had a whole cargo. They had a whole crate of, that ship had a whole crate of lithium batteries on it stuck.
Yeah. I heard that. That's
I got a whole bunch of customers waiting on that ship.
Ship, waiting on the ship.
Ship.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a couple people saying it's Dale Hollow Lake, not Cumberland.
Dale Hollow Lake. Yep. Thank you. Yep. That's correct. I'm not too good with those southern lakes. I've not been down to them yet. Can't wait to get there. They've been on my bucket list for years for bass and crappie. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself down there. Yeah, Dale Hollow. That's correct.
That is definitely how it feels coming into spring here. And I guess as far as your adventures, can you tell us how people can follow you and watch tournaments and cheer you on and all that?
Sure. Right now, it's just through my Facebook page, Gus Glasgow. You can follow me on there. You can find me on there, and add me. And I'm trying to post as much information as I can to just not only support the people interested in the sport, to spread information on the Crappie Club, the Northeast Ohio Crappie Club. That's also something you can find on Facebook. If you're from the area or not from the area, you just want to come in and hang out with us. That's a great series to jump into. You can also find our Hardwater page, or WPAHardwater.com is the website. It still hasn't been updated. I kind of just put that on I had enough of that for now. So I don't even want to think about ice fishing right now. We are going to be, we already have some lakes picked out. That was something we talked about while we were traveling this week, is where we're going to be going ice fishing next year. So that's already in the works, and I think we got it lined up. So the Hardwater fans that are out there, we got a couple surprises and twists in there coming up real soon for you. That's unlike what we've done before. So that's exciting. But you'll be looking for a G&G Marine website here in the near future. That's just stay tuned, I suppose.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because I was going to say, excuse me, remind people how they get a hold of your G&G Marine, but I think that you said that right there, that it was your Facebook.
Yep. For now, just for now, I didn't want to go too crazy until the business build itself. It's building itself on its own right now. So soon as we get a little more equity, we'll be able to build a really nice website, do some internet sales and whatnot.
Cool.
Perfect. Well, we are excited for that. Always more to come. Mm-hmm. And thanks for being here tonight to talk all about this.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's always an honor to talk to you guys and see you guys. I've been following you all year and through the winter and all the shows. I wish I could have been. They need to move one of these ice shows out this direction. There's crazy passionate ice anglers out here. It's insane. I think we might give the Midwest a run for its money on the passionate.
Well, and either way, we'll come and visit you one of these days.
Yeah.
Awesome. And to the people at home, thank you guys as well, because it is always chatting fishing with all of you and hearing all your input and all of those things. And with that, we're looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.